First, John McCain's claim that Iran was taking members of al-Qaeda in Iraq, training them, and then sending them back to Iraq appeared to be a momentary misstatement, that he meant to say extremists. In our fourth story tonight, despite the fact that McCain himself said he was wrong, his campaign today issued a prepared statement saying, quote, al-Qaeda and Shia extremists with support from external powers such as Iran are on the run but not defeated. In fact, his linking of Iran with al-Qaeda in Iraq has been a pattern with McCain during his Mideast trip, telling right-wing radio on Monday, quote, as you know, there are al-Qaeda operatives that are taken back into Iran, given training as leaders, and they're moving back into Iraq. If you also watch yesterday's news conference in its entirety, the notion that McCain momentarily misspoke becomes even less tenable. In the first 2 minutes, he speaks about both al-Qaeda and Iran, never mentioning Iraqi extremists, militias, or insurgents, then expands on his fears about Iran's influence.
We continue to be concerned about Iranian taking al-Qaeda into Iran, training them and sending them back.
7 minutes later, still having never said extremists, McCain portrays al-Qaeda and Iran as mutual beneficiaries of a U.S. departure.
If we pull out of Iraq, then obviously the Iranian influence is dramatically increased. Al-Qaeda has greater influence and endangers the region dramatically.
3 minutes later, still never saying extremists, McCain is questioned by a reporter off mic so we can't hear it, not only repeats but defends his previous claim.
It's common knowledge and has been reported in the media that that al-Qaeda is going back into Iran and receiving training and are coming back into Iraq from Iran. That's well known.
He continues his answer with more discussion of Iran's influence, more discussion of al-Qaeda being on the run, a problem in Mosul, references which clearly are about al-Qaeda in Iraq. At no point has he ever used the word he supposedly had in mind all this time, extremists. So why did he suddenly change his language? As you will see, he did not, as his campaign claimed, correct himself.
If we leave Iraq, it will enhance Iranian influence in the region to the detriment, I think, of every nation in the region.
You said that the Iranians were training al-Qaeda. I'm sorry. Training extremists.
I'm sorry. The Iranians are training extremists, not al-Qaeda.
With us now to whisper sweet nothings into our ears, MSNBC political analyst Johnathon Alter, of course, also the senior editor for Newsweek. Good to see you, John.
Hi, Keith.
He insisted to Kelly O'Donnell in Jerusalem tonight, this was a slip, this is the quote, to think that I would have some lack of knowledge about Sunni and Shia after my 8th visit and my deep involvement in this issue is a bit ludicrous. So how do you slip 3 times, get corrected by your friend Joe Lieberman, and then come back the next day and slip again?
Well, first of all, this is something that John McCain and those of us who've covered him for many years are familiar with. This kind of, it's almost like out of the old SNL skit where Chris Farley goes, I'm so stupid, and he bangs himself on the forehead and gets kind of charm points for admitting having slipped up because of fatigue, and it is very tiring during all this travel and all that kind of thing, or just sort of human error. So he's gotten a lot of breaks over the years for being imprecise from the press, in part because there's a lot of fatigue with playing gotcha games with all these politicians. And at a certain point, it does get a little bit silly. But having said that, what John McCain is clearly trying to do here is to conflate, again, all of the bad guys over there in a way to confuse Americans who are not paying close attention. When I asked them for evidence that the Iranian Shia were supporting Sunnis inside Iraq, they referred me to an American Enterprise Institute study that was very old, the sourcing was old, and not at all explicit. This is not the main thrust of what's going on there, and it's counterintuitive since the Shia and the Sunni don't like each other, for anybody who's been paying any attention. And so what he's trying to basically do is say, look, they're all a bunch of bad guys. Trust me because I'm the one who has experience here. And Obama and Clinton are trying to call him on.
Yeah, but he's saying all terrorists are al-Qaeda, all extremists are al-Qaeda. You're basically then offering the public 2 choices, and neither of them seem to be very good for Mr. McCain, which is it's a senior moment. It's not Chris Farley, it's Emily Latella. a 2-day-long senior moment interrupted by a second or two of clarity, or it's a conflation worthy of George Bush, which is to say, a bald-faced lie about it. It's one of those two things. It has to be one of those two things. It would seem that the Republicans have a rather large hole in their defensive line on this.
I think it was some kind of combination. I mean, it wasn't a senior moment, but a little bit of a slip, and he corrects it. Then part of him's thinking, well, why make a big deal of correcting this since I want to conflate, as you say, and convey to the American public that, you know, there are people in Iran who want to do us dirty. And if we have to kind of mess a little bit with the facts in order to convey that impression, he's going to do that.
And the Republicans do what defensively, and what happens in a debate against either one of these Democrats who are fairly quick on their feet in the event that he is caught in one of these contradictions that seem to happen about every 10 days?
Well, first of all, the Democrats have to be careful not to underplay the threat posed by Iran. Iran is making mischief inside Iraq. Possibly
that's
even
just about Iran, but I'm talking about John McCain saying A and then Z and saying, no, it's just a slip, or I didn't know, I wasn't fully briefed, I made a mistake. What about that construction, whatever the topic is?
That could really come back to haunt John McCain, because John McCain's a smart guy, but he's never been a policy guy. He's never been a detail guy. In the 15 years I've known him, he doesn't like to get way down into the into the muck on these issues the way Clinton and Obama and a lot of other politicians do. And it's very possible that debates will turn on some of these smaller factual points, and he could find himself in a position that's a little bit hard to defend if he's not very clear and very up-to-date on all the facts.
What's all this I keep hearing about violins in Iraq? Johnathon Alter of Newsweek and MSNBC. As always, good to see you. Thanks for coming in.
Thanks, Keith.